All right, guys, welcome back to Wide Awake News Radio. I'm Charlie McGrath, your host, as we roll into hour number 2 on this 12th day of February, Tuesday. Joining me here in just a minute, Greg Hunter of USAWatchdog.com, absolutely one of my favorite websites for sourcing real information. And as I said in the first hour, I'm really glad that we were able to finally get him on. But before I bring him on, we're certainly going to talk about the State of the Union, which is a big topic, obviously, since the president is, this is the day of the State of the Union propaganda piece. And earlier today, I did an RT interview. I don't know if that's posted yet or not, but they wanted me to talk about the State of the Union and what could come out in the speech, and why we're focused. This speech is focused on the middle class, because this speech that we're going to hear tonight is focused around domestic policy, namely the middle class. And I have a theory on this, and I don't think it's too conspiratorial. I think it's been proven with recent history that, of course, we're going to start trying to draw the middle class into the economic equation. Look, we've had 5+ years of giving unlimited amount of money to a bunch of banks, and the end result is we don't have more jobs. We don't have more prosperity. We don't have a recovering anything in this country if we don't use skewed statistics. So this what I consider to be crime of ripping off our financial future to hand it to financial special interests now needs to continue. And for this to continue, we have to be scared into, or governed by crisis, into allowing more debt to be heaped on us. So focusing on the middle class tonight, promising that this fledgling recovery cannot be stalled. And what I'm talking about is the debt ceiling and the fiscal cliff deals, air quote deals, that were done a little while back. They didn't really accomplish anything with all the hoopla and all the rally on the market that ensued after the debt ceiling and the fiscal cliff was settled. Well, when the true story came out, it wasn't settled. It was just kicked down the road a few months. And unfortunately, that can landed on March 1st. So we're heading into March. We're going to have this president, this administration, our government trying to convince us that we need to pile more debt onto the people of this nation in order to have this recovery continue. We're going to hear a lot about two things are going to happen on March 1st. We're either going to take on more debt as more sovereign debt put onto the backs of the people of the country, or we're going to see draconian cuts, smaller government. We're going to slash the military. We're going to slash social spending. And basically, all hell is going to break loose, and it'll be financial Armageddon. This has been the modus operandi for years now. Governed by crisis, scare the people. So, president's going to come out tonight, talk about the middle class. It's time to keep this recovery going and focus more on the middle class. In order to do this, we're going to have to do X, Y, and Z, promising that X, Y, and Z is going to be more stealing of your financial future. Let's look real quickly, and we'll bring Greg on here, at the record of this administration. And for anybody who thinks I'm picking on Obama because he's a Democrat or on the blue team, well, those of you who listen to me for some time understand that I do not see a difference whatsoever between Barack Obama, George W. Bush, Bill Clinton, George H.W. Bush, or any other president that has been serving financial special interests in Washington, D.C. When the cameras are on, they're going to placate the masses that they represent, allegedly, be it the blue team or the red team. When those cameras are off, the deals that are cut, it doesn't matter if it's a Democrat or a Republican. It is serving financial special interests. It doesn't matter if it's a promise to end wars. We don't. It doesn't matter if it's a promise to end sending American citizens to Gitmo for forever because they happen to be labeled a belligerent actor. They promise these kind of tactics are going to end. They don't. So I'm not picking on the current president any more than I would George W. Bush. But looking at the track record over this last 4 years, on this very day in 2008, our national debt was $9.4 trillion. Today, $16.5 and growing. Debt per taxpayer, $87,000 on this day in 2008. It has mushroomed to $147,000 per taxpayer. Unemployed, conservative number in 2008, 13 million. A very conservative number on this eve is 22 million. The shocking statistic that shows you how they manipulate numbers in order to convince you that we're on the right path, and I'm talking about the unemployment rate, which is hovering around 8%. In 2008, on this very day, was 145 million people in the workforce. Tonight, there's 2 million less, 143 million, even though we've had a population expansion in that same amount of time. So all these statistics throwing us further and further into debt and more burden on the people, they're growing, they're mushrooming, they're exploding out of control. Yet the number of people that they report working is shrinking, giving them cover to report an 8% unemployment number. And the last statistic, and we'll bring Greg on because I'm rambling on, is food stamp usage. All right, this social safety net that's being used to help make a malleable populace. 28.8 million people on this day in 2008. Tonight we sit here at 48.1 million. So if you ask me, the state of the union, well, it's desperate. All right, like I said, Greg Hunter, he is the founder of USAWatchdog.com, an absolutely critical resource if you're looking for the truth. Bookmark it, go there. I do every single day. Greg, welcome to the program. It's great to finally get you on.
Charlie, good to be here. You're spot on the money, and there is no difference between Republicans and Democrats. And I'll back you up on that. I wrote a piece right after the election about the things that weren't talked about in the election. And everybody's like, well, it was the makers and the takers. No, not really. I think the populace looked at Obama and looked at Romney, and Romney, stood up in the debate, one of the debates and said, I'm for the NDAA. He's for the indefinite detention of Americans.
Yeah.
And and this is widely reported. This is not some small little blip somewhere on some out-of-the-way news site. It was widely reported that we were using drones and drone strikes to, basically kill people in sovereign countries where we weren't at war. Like, for example, Pakistan, we've had 320 strikes there, hundreds,
right,
if not thousands of people. And also, if you say, well, they get what they get, they're against us. Okay, what about American citizens? I mean, we killed American citizens in Somalia and Yemen in particular, which they're suing the government over, and one of them was a 16-year-old boy.
That's right. That was
without due process. Now, Senator Dianne Feinstein wants to have secret courts. Okay, so let's get the Fourth and Fifth Amendment. Let's go for a trifecta. Let's get the Sixth Amendment, for a trial. Let's get that. Have a secret court. She wants to have a secret court.
You're absolutely right. And that Denver 16-year-old boy, that's what he was, is a boy, was Anwar al-Awlaki's son.
That's right. Anwar al-Awlaki's son.
That's right. And a lot of people say, well, he was killed with his son. No, he wasn't.
No,
he was killed
different
2
time.
weeks later. 2 weeks later, in an independent strike.
And none of those things came up. Look at health care. I mean, come on. Romney gave health care to everybody in, Massachusetts.
Right.
So there really wasn't a difference when it came down to it. Oh, and the bankers. Did any of these bankers go to jail? None. Zero. No. This is 70 times bigger than the savings and loan crisis. We put 1,000 financial elites, not clerks, not people who are shoving mortgages out the window. We're talking about financial elites, including a sitting governor, Guy Tucker. Remember him from Arkansas?
Yes, I do.
And we successfully prosecuted 1,000 financial elites, and we haven't put one in jail, not one single one. And the bailouts, and here's the other thing that is crazy. Anybody come up and say, hey, I don't think the Federal Reserve ought to be printing $85 billion a month. That's what they're telling us. That's what's on the record. We don't know what they're doing off books with the currency swaps in Europe, and we don't know what they're doing off the books. But they're $85 billion a month, $1 trillion a year.
That's right.
The real gap. Go ahead.
They're the number one purchaser of our debt.
90-some-odd percent, 90% of the debt. The car industry, wow, it's healthy again. Yep, subprime loans are back for houses, and they've been back for a while for cars. And who's on the hook for that? Yes, you guessed it, the taxpayer. And you're on not just so much in collecting taxes and debasing your currency. And the thing about putting this off on our kids and grandkids, I think that's 80s and 90s talk. I think what's coming for us is in the here and now.
I could not agree with that more. Hold on a minute. We're going to be forced to take a break here. We got a break coming up. I could not agree with that more, but I wouldn't do my job if on the backside of this break, I want to give everybody who hasn't heard you before in an interview or been to your website a little bit of your history, so that I can show the folks that we need to listen to you because you've been in the trenches and you called a lot of these things that have come to pass. We're going to be back in just a few minutes with Greg Hunter of USAWatchdog.com. We'll be right back. All right, guys, welcome back to Wide Awake News Radio. Greg Hunter, founder of USAWatchdog.com, is our guest. And I'm telling you right now, the rest of this program is going to be rapid fire because Greg and I knew this was going to happen, just absolutely feed off each other as far as pointing out the collusion and corruption that we have in our system. But before we get going, let me mention his YouTube channel, Greg Hunter on YouTube. You can go there, subscribe to his channel. I'm assuming you put up a lot of good videos there. And his website, again, usawatchdog.com. Greg, before we go any further into current events, tell us a little bit about your past, how you got to the point where you decided to found usawatchdog.com.
Well, I was my daddy was a machinist. Okay, I have no pedigree. And I say that with all loving respect to my parents. Okay, I didn't go to Yale, I didn't go to Harvard, I didn't go to an Ivy League. I went to University of Missouri because that's where I grew up, Missouri.
The Show Me State.
The Show Me State, correct. And I worked my way up to television. I remember telling my dad the very first time, "Hey, Dad, what's your major going to be?" Dad says to me, and I say, "Well, it's going to be radio and TV." And he, dead silence, and he said, "Is there any money in fixing those things?" And my dad was not a stupid man. He was a brilliant guy. He just grew up in industry, and he was a machinist, and that was like speaking Mandarin to him. Anyway, I worked my way up.
That's ironic. It's ironic that you say speaking Mandarin, because that's probably where his job's at right now. But
yeah, it's probably where. Yeah. And so I went from I worked my way up to 4 or 5 television markets. I was in Tampa. I got called by Good Morning America to do be an investigative correspondent. I worked there. I worked at CNN. I did nothing but R&D stories. I didn't go out and cover fires or manhunts or droughts or I did stuff that had to be put together and had to be approved by the lawyers. And as an investigative, I'm an investigative correspondent. Well, yeah, you know what? Investigative people, all they do is look at data. So I was good at looking at data. And basically, while I was at CNN, I started getting, and I've always liked the economy because I never knew what these guys were saying. They were, the call options, and if we could get some liquidity, and I thought, what are they saying? What the hell are they saying?
Right.
Well, I learned what they were saying, and I was at CNN with Ali Velshi and Jerry Willis, who was over there. Yes. And I was over there, and I was looking at the economy, and I was starting to have these running battles with Ali Velshi about the Fed and about how the market was topping out. I was running around telling everybody at CNN in 2007, or I think early 2008, get out of the market, get out. I was telling everybody. I was having these little sparring things with Ali Velshi on the air and saying, hey, all the banks were in trouble in 2007. I was telling them, are we in a recession? Remember that?
Yes,
I was in a recession in 2007, and I'd say, well, you can't knock out the banks, you can't knock out housing, you can't knock out autos and not be in a recession. And I was saying that all the banks were in trouble. If you go to my website, you could see in March, I think, as one of my ongoing themes, I say this at the end, all the banks are in trouble. And, of course, they were, according to Treasury Secretary Geithner, Mr. Turbo. And I was having these running battles with Ali Velshi and with Jerry Willis. Remember that about the real estate, the subprime was going to be contained.
Sure.
And my sources.
It was a $20 billion problem, not going to be a big deal. Housing never falls.
Trillions of dollars in fraud. And Ali Velshi stopped me. Ali Velshi is actually a nice guy. Jerry Willis actually stopped me in the elevator one day and said, "How can you say that the housing crisis is going to affect everything?" I said, "Well, it is. It's going to affect all stratifications of real estate. I mean, commercial, residential, rich houses, poor houses. Right. Subprime. It's going to affect everything." She said, "Well, my sources say it's going to be contained." I said, "Well, your sources say it's skin in the game," and I was right. And the other big thing was the president of Time Warner at the time was a guy by the name of Dick Parsons, who was also on the board of Citigroup. How do you think it went over when one of his buddies said, "Hey, Dick, who's this Craig or Bob or whoever this Hunter guy is saying all the you need to shut him up?" And I was right as rain. I had gotten my second CNN audition on national radio, and they were loving me, man. Things were popping. I was doing these things in the economy, saying the totally opposite from. I was making fun of the president, saying he says it's going to be contained. Come on, stop. I was making fun of the president. I was talking about how terrible this housing crisis was, about the foreclosure fraud that was going on. They were forging documents. That turned into robo-signing. Remember that? Robo-signing. What it really was forgery, perjury, and fraud on the court, and nobody went went to jail for it, and they kicked millions of people out of their houses. They stole millions of houses. They stole millions of houses.
Still doing it.
And they got a fine.
Still doing it. Got a $5 billion fine that we got to pay for. We paid
nothing.
For that.
They got nothing. And so I was doing all this stuff at CNN, and I was fascinated by the economy. I was fascinated because it was, in the end, as I told you, what people in investigative reporting do, really, if they're good at it, hopefully I'm pretty good at it, or okay at it, is that they just are good at looking at data and being able to tell you what it is. You know, it's like remember those coloring books with the numbered dots, and then you have to draw them, and you'd say, oh, that's an elephant, oh, that's a butterfly. Well, that's what investigative reporting is. It's a bunch of data points, and you say, oh, this car kills people. Oh, this munitions can go right through a tank, but cause you to die from heavy metal and radiological poison. And so you have to boil it down to simple things. And that Dick Parsons was not happy with me, and so I was killing it. I was doing good, and all of a sudden it was just like, yep, we're not renewing your contract. What? What?
You said the wrong thing. Hold on a minute, Greg. Hold on. You said the wrong thing, and you were ousted. I'd love to pick your brain a little bit about the mainstream media and the connection with advertisers. Maybe we can get into that a little bit. But when we come back, I want to break down where we're at now and what some of your same sources that you've kept are telling you what we're heading into. We're going to be back with Greg Hunter, USAWatchdog.com. We're going to be right back. Guys, welcome back to Wide Awake News Radio. Charlie McGrath joined by Greg Hunter, base founder, as they sometimes say, base founder of USAWatchdog.com. Please go to his site, bookmark it, go there every day. All kinds of great interviews. You have one with Paul Craig Roberts up there right now. Maybe we can get into that a little bit. But here's what I want to talk about next. We sit here at the State of the Union tonight, and I didn't even look at the Dow today. Whatever, let's just call it 14,000 because it's within spitting distance of that one way or the other. Dow 14,000. Mortgage rates are 2%, 2.5%, 3%. This feeling of euphoria that we fix the problem by shoveling, literally, not figuratively, literally, trillions and trillions of dollars into the coffers of the banks who brought us here. We are being told, we are being made to believe that we're on the path to blowing out of this recession and happy days are here again. And I'm here to tell you, and I think Greg will back me up on this, it ain't happening. It's far, far worse than it feels like 2007 in some respects. Stock market 14,000, subprime loans rolling out the door. Now we can add student loan $1 trillion, student debt $1 trillion to that. But the last, in my opinion, the last 5 years have been used to have financial industry legislation written by them, for them, to transfer massive amounts of fraudulent failure onto the backs of the people of this country and the world, so that when this next bomb goes off, and it is guaranteed that it's going to happen, it's not a matter of if, it's when, everything is going to land onto the people of this country and in other countries that are dominated by central bank control. They're being set up for the same thing. $9.4 trillion in sovereign debt in 2008, $16.5 trillion as we sit here tonight. Projections are $20 trillion right around the corner. All of this becomes our problem. Now, if we're sitting here talking about an economy that's vibrant and growing and manufacturing jobs and real home values are starting to increase and these pillars of economy are starting to show signs of life, that's one thing that you might be able to say, well, you know what? We made some mistakes in the past, but we fixed these problems. We are going to turn the corner now. But that isn't the case, is it, Greg?
Absolutely not. I mean, they are suppressing interest rates, and it is costing the buying power of your money. And, we have a 3.5%, or roughly, 30-year mortgage rate. Nobody but the government would be stupid enough to loan you money for 30 years other than the government. And so people let's get down to get granular. What does that mean to you? Number one, this $9 trillion or $16 trillion or whatever it is that you would like to say it is. This is never going to get paid off in anything representing the dollars you're holding today. I'm not a trader, and I don't tell people to buy and sell stocks or whatever. What I tell people is that the path we're on is an inflationary path. The Federal Reserve is not going to allow deflation. They're not going to allow deflation. And actually, for poor people, deflation is good Because when poor people don't have a lot of money, getting more buying power out of your money is good. And the people who voted for Obama, and I'm neither Democrat nor Republican because I think there's no real difference, but the people who voted for him thinking, oh, Obama's going to take care of us, you can forget that. And I have another theory, too, about that. Look at the states of New York and New Jersey and Illinois and California. And they have debt that they'll never pay back. New Jersey, $282 billion, never pay back. New York, $15 billion. They get hit with a Category 1 hurricane, and we spent $60 billion. $60 billion, the entire this year's tax increase, sending New York and New Jersey a check because they're broke. They don't have any money. California, same thing, $600 billion. They're never going to pay that back, and this is going to end up being paid back one way or the other. It'll be paid through inflation and lower standard of living, and that's the trend. It's just no sunshine and no rainbows here for anybody, and if we have three basic bubbles going on. The stock market. If you watch CNBC or any of these business shows, they don't even mention we have 0% interest rates through 2015, at least the middle of it. We have $85 billion a month to suppress interest rate. We're printing $1 trillion a year. I mean, we take in a little more than $2 trillion, and we spend a little more than $3 trillion on a cash basis, right? So $1 trillion we're just printing to make up the difference. On top of that, people like John Williams at Shadowstats.com say that the real account deficit was about $7 trillion, and it's averaged about $5 trillion over the last 5 years. The real generally accepted accounting principles count everything that you are on the hook for, and all your bailouts and all your Medicare and Medicaid and prescription drug programs. And what it tells me is that we are going to have at some point, grand collapse. And I think 2013, it wasn't 2012, and I didn't hear this from any of my sources, but 2013 is the vibration I'm getting is there's going to be some major OMG moment in 2013, and it could be this new debt ceiling. It could be the sequester, and it could be a series of things. And it also could be that, people don't realize, well, how are we going to get inflation if we don't have any really growth in wages? Forget that. There's $12 trillion held outside the country. And if we have some kind of war right now, they're getting kind of tense between China and Japan because they're fighting over islands rich in natural gas. And I'll tell you, if we go to defend Japan, would China sell $1 trillion of our treasuries? What would that do to the treasury market? I mean, we basically put these treasuries out. We borrow all this money. We're in some kind of nirvana where we're spending $85 billion a month, every month, to infinity. Open-ended is what they call it. And the stock market, that's just normal. 0% interest rates, $85 billion, that's normal. The bond market, we're buying 90% of the treasuries, according to a Bloomberg report recently. Some people say it's 95. And the stock market is in a nirvana. I mean, you have a market that if you pulled that $85 billion a month, you could stand back and yell timber.
Right.
It would all come crashing down. It would be over. And they're saying, and you say, why are they doing this? Well, they're buying time. They're hoping they can get this to turn around. They can pump enough money into the system, enough liquidity. Maybe it'll get back to the way it used to be. We'll grow our way out of it. No, we're not. We're not going to grow our way out of it. We should have had in 2008, we missed an opportunity. We should have taken the banks to receivership. Bank of America, Goldman Sachs, Citi Group, Wells Fargo, maybe not Wells Fargo, but Morgan Stanley. They all should have been taken to receivership. We could have protected all the depositors. It would have cost about $6 trillion. And what did the FinReg bill, the special audit, the one-time audit of the Fed show us? They pumped out $16.2 trillion. And is it fixed? No, Nope. It's not fixed.
It's worse.
It's worse. And we could have protected all the depositors. Now, all the, excuse me, I left out the J.P. Morgan Chase, Jamie Dimon. All those people would have been fired. All those people would have been canned. We'd have kept the banks. We'd have protected the depositors. But all the traders, all these guys, this whole London whale thing where basically J.P. Morgan is backed up by FDIC insurance now. All of them have FDIC insurance. So I used to have this saying about Tampa Bay. I used to live in Tampa Bay, and the good thing about Tampa Bay is the bay. And the bad thing about Tampa Bay is the bay, because it can fill up with water and cause massive flooding. And so, the good thing about the $85 billion a month, the good thing about the economy is the $85 billion a month, because that's what's, levitating it. The bad thing about it is the $85 billion a month. And two things, and you got to keep this in mind. This is where your viewers, your listeners should pay attention. Two things never happened in the Great Depression. Number one, credit rating of the United States was never in peril. What did S&P do a year ago? Now they're being sued. Cut the credit rating of the United States. Number two, the dollar was never questioned. And what are you seeing around the globe? Yuan, ruble currency swaps, yuan, yen currency swaps, yuan, real currency swaps. They're trying to get away from the dollar.
Well, if that wasn't the case, the Fed wouldn't have to step up and buy 85.
That's right. And the reason why they have to do that is because the Fed said, okay, we're not going to buy anything. We're going to put our debt out on the market. What do you suppose somebody would have to get for an interest rate to take care of the risk of the United States of America? What do you suppose they'd have to pay? 7%? 9%?
No, I think it'd be higher than that. I think you go back to the days of Reagan. I think you could see 17, 18, 19%.
What's going to happen to real estate if it just went back to 6 or 7% for 30-year money? What do you think would happen? Yes, it would. Yes, it would.
Not only that, if that 0% policy, if that sail ships, or if that ship leaves port, guess what? It's game over. I mean, right now, what we're paying just in interest alone is in the workings of tricky accounting is manageable. But that's it. That's with no interest on it whatsoever. If we went back to, like you said, even 5-6%, it's game over.
As long as we're the world's reserve currency and we can buy oil with dollars, and that's where the Fed feels pretty smug, is that there really isn't anything there to take up billions and billions of dollars. You can't park your money in a bank account. You can't park $2.5 billion in a bank account that gives $250,000 in insurance. That's where the Treasury market comes in. That said, they are, China is investing in record amounts of gold. Russia is investing record amounts of gold. They're starting to use their own currency and cutting the United States dollar out of transactions on the world stage. And so, when Mr. Market finally decides to reprice everything, interest rates, dollars, gold. But that's the thing. Everybody thinks, well, I got money in my bank account and I got FDIC insurance. Back to the whole the good thing about Tampa Bay is the Bay. The bad thing about Tampa Bay is the Bay. The good thing about FDIC insurance is it insures depositors. The bad thing about FDIC insurance, it insures people like J.P. Morgan Chase and the London Whale to basically operate their bank as a hedge fund with a taxpayer backup.
Yeah,
that's the problem.
It's even more disgusting than that. I mean, in the case of J.P. Morgan, I believe it was their Merrill division that they rolled a bunch of derivatives from one division to another, so it would end up with
Merrill Bank of America.
Yeah. The whole maneuver was done in order to, or the whole tack, I should say, was done in order to put a lot of this derivative nightmare that eventually is going to become our problem under the protection of the government umbrella.
The leverage in the system too, Charlie, is it's off the charts. There is no parallel in human history for the amount of debt and leverage in the system. I mean, it is bigger by orders of magnitude. I mean, when you take a look at J.P. Morgan's alone, just their derivative exposure, a lot of this interest rate suppression is happening with derivatives. Interest rate derivatives, they have nearly $70 trillion. Well, you know what the global GDP is nearly $70 trillion.
Yeah,
that's one bank has that much exposure. Goldman Sachs has a huge, $40 trillion, in exposure to derivatives, and they have about $100 billion in capital base. I mean, they have huge, astronomical leverage positions. And if somebody zigs when they're supposed to zag, you talk about Nassim Taleb in the Black Swan, some random thing happens. I mean, some nuke goes off in downtown Tel Aviv, or somebody, decides to, sink an aircraft carrier, the USS Kitty Hawk, or the Ronald Reagan in the Persian Gulf, or, there's so many, look what's happening in Korea. I mean, they're lobbing missiles over at Japan and saying, we'd like to hit the United States someday with a nuclear missile. I mean, there are so many
set one off last night. They said they.
Yeah, there are so many ways for this to go bad. So how can people protect themselves? And listen, I'm not a trader. I don't tell people, position trades. I don't do that for a living. But people need to not fight the last one. The last war was my bank account insured in the 20s. There was no insurance, so the FDIC came along, right? Well, now the bad thing about insurance is everybody gets it. It's great for a mom and pop bank where the bank president runs off with the secretary and takes your money. Okay, that's fabulous for that. It's not fabulous for Citigroup going under. It's not fabulous for a Bank of America getting a deep doo-doo. It's not fabulous for that because the entire country is imperiled because of it. And how much will it cost to print it out? And how much will the currency be debased? And will we get a new currency?
That's got to be the question, right? Because you've taken the system that had a handful of institutions that we all know now are the too big to fail, and made them, they were systemic.
They should have failed.
Absolutely, I agree with that 100%. But we've taken them from a position where they could decimate an economy, and in fact did, and we've turned them into now these juggernauts that even have more power than they did pre-2008 crisis.
Yes, that's right.
To the point that it's almost, I've used this description before. In 2008, 2009, you had these CEOs coming to D.C., hat in hand, deer in the headlight look. Please help us.
That's right. Lloyd Blankfein, we're all in this together. Oh, really? I'd like to have a piece of your bonus, you weasel.
No doubt about it. But now they're in a position where they don't have to ask, right? They can demand because their title has went from being systemic to dominating the global. You mentioned one having a derivative exposure of $70 trillion, and I believe the global GDP is about $64 trillion. Last time I checked, just one of these institutions has the kind of power that if they're not placated to, they can end this whole show tomorrow.
That's right, and what people need to, let's just. I like to quote sources for my opinions. Because my opinions are basically shaped by a lot of people I talk to, and some people I think, you're full of crap, and other people I say, ooh, that's wow, that's important, that makes sense. And one of them is, and this is so important, and not only what is said, but who is saying it. And I don't know if anybody knows Bill Gross from PIMCO, but Bill Gross' nickname is the Bond King.
Right.
Okay. On the company website, on the PIMCO website, I linked to it on my site. I don't know if it's still there, but he has been saying for the last 2 or 3 months that that he wrote a piece called "Credit Supernova," and that basically money's not printed; the bonds are printed. When there's money printed to buy the bonds, and so credit is growing, right? And he made a living out of credit. I mean, that's what a bond is. It's taking some fiat currency, wrapping it into a bond, and in the future you get interest plus your principal back and enough interest to make up for the inflation. On the company website, and this guy has almost $2 trillion under management. $2 trillion under management. And on the company website, just recently, last week or so, he ended his thing, he buried his lead, as they say in journalism, but at the end he says, you need to buy something that can't be reproduced, such as credit. You shouldn't be buying stuff like credit because it can be easily reproduced. You need to buy things, this is his quote, you need to buy things you can sink your teeth into, like gold. Now, that's like the Pope, who's stepping down, incidentally. That's like the Pope coming out and, in St. Peter's Square and saying, hello, I think, this Christ, think, is way, blown. I think, we should get into Buddha, That's what that's like. I mean, that's
religions. He's switching
religions. That's like the Pope saying we should. Yeah, that Christ thing's a little overblown, even though we set our calendar from him. I think we need to get into Buddha. Can you imagine that? And this is Bill Gross telling people to buy gold.
Yeah.
Well, and you know what? You should do what rich people are doing. You should buy gold, and other people should buy silver. You should put some people shouldn't buy any of that. They should put a set of tires on their car. They should go out and buy some dried food, not because there won't be any, because it'll never be any cheaper.
Right now, as you're talking, I found Credit Supernova by Bill Gross, and I'm going to drop it into the chat room.
Read the very bottom. If you go right to the very bottom, you can get his exact quote. But he said you should buy things that you sink your teeth into. Right at the back, the bullet points at the bottom. It's like the second to the last one or third to the last one. You could buy things that you can't reproduce easily. You should buy things you can sink your teeth into, like gold.
Yeah.
Can you imagine that?
No, I can't, because you're right. He is a bond king. But didn't he get completely out of bonds?
No. PIMCO's still a Pacific International Management Company, I think, is what it is. But it's they are a huge bond. They have other investments, but they're primarily, Bill Gross made his fortune in bonds. He is the bond king. And the reason why is because we had these 17% interest rates in 1980, and I think he started PIMCO in, 82 or 3 or 4. And, he rode this big wave of descending interest rates coming down, all the way until what? We have 0%, right?
Right.
And so we're pretty much at the bottom. So when rates go back up, I mean, if you're invested in treasuries, you're going to get killed. Your principal is going to be under attack, and things are going to deflate. Now, that's one of the guys who's been right about this, about QE to infinity, long before they had open-ended QE. That's the Fed term, open-ended QE. A guy by the name of Jim Sinclair was saying they're going to have to do this to infinity. Once they started, they're going to have to do it to infinity. I thought, what? Huh? Say what? He's right. If they stop, the whole thing implodes. Now, you think about your stock investment portfolio. If they stop $40 billion a month in mortgage-backed securities and $45 billion a month, this is what they're admitting. We don't know about the swap lines in Europe. If they stop $85 billion a month, $1 trillion a year, I mean, I'm telling you, you can just stand back and yell timber. I mean, the whole thing implodes.
Yeah.
And so they say, well, what's wrong with just keeping doing that? Well, you're just going to keep doing that. Well, then you will massively debase your currency. I mean, it's just like, oh, yeah, we're going to keep doing it. And, a gallon of gas is going to be $15, and a loaf of bread's $22.50.
Yeah, and people think that can't happen, but it has happened throughout history before. And in fact, there's a strong argument to be made that we're well on our way. I mean, we're looking at this time of year highest fuel prices on record. And when you go to the grocery store, you absolutely can see, $4 for a gallon of milk and so on. But there's no doubt. But you keep rolling down this path, then you end up with this. You're trying to balance between if we raise interest rates, then we're going to implode everything. We're going to
that's that we may not have the choice in the future. I mean, that's the thing. Right now, we're the world's reserve currency, and so how long that lasts.
There's a big, like you said, there's a big push, especially by the BRIC nations, to collaborate and trade in and amongst their own currencies. In some cases, they're even trading in precious metal. That's how Iran right now is still able to broker deals with its oil. They're using gold. So I mean, the world is making maneuvers in order to for the petrodollar to die a violent death.
Well, they're just going to start selling oil like it was in 1971 and 73 and earlier. Yeah. And that is that you could buy it in yen, or you could buy it in Deutschmarks, or you could buy it in dollars, or you could buy it in pound sterling. Or see, now they Saudi Arabia said, well, we'll sell all our oil in dollars. That's why it's priced in dollars. So people say, well, the dollar's not backed by anything. Oh, yes, it is. It's backed by oil. Now we do have a couple of bright spots. One of them is the flyover country, the Midwest, which is where real wealth is being generated because we can grow food. And also, we have a burgeoning oil boom in the upper Midwest, and with all this oil technology. But it's not enough. It is not enough to save the country from the immense monster debt situation that we have. It is not enough for that. Thank God we have oil to come out of this.
Well, you're talking about the Bakken Reserve, which isn't far from me, and the oil sands up in Canada.
That's right.
And matter of fact, a listener to the program actually sent me an email, and I advised him on, if he's looking, he was in the Midwest and that was decimated in the auto industry, and he moved out there and found a job. However, that being said, you're talking about a state of North Dakota with 500,000 people in it, and an industry that is exploding right there. Property values are going through the roof, and guys at McDonald's are making $15 an hour,
but it's not enough.
You can't
the
put
amount of debt that we
there.
have is massive. It's massive.
Yeah, no doubt. You can't shove 22 million people that are out of work into that region. It's just not going to happen. So yeah, it is a bright spot, but
it's not going to save us. It's going to help us come out of this eventually when the thing crashes. And one of the guys that I talked to, John Williams, a lot. I talked to him a lot, and he thinks that that ultimately what's going to happen, and what caused the German mark to hyperinflate really were traders, external forces. people just thought, well, they just printed so much money that actually, yes, they did print a lot of money. However, traders killed the mark. Traders. And ultimately, what's going to happen to the dollar is going to be a function of the markets. They're going to get the last word. And eventually the market's going to reprice gold. It's being suppressed. They're going to reprice interest rates. They're being suppressed. They're going to reprice the stock market. It's being. How do you price the stock market into the future, in future earnings, with what you have right now with 0% interest and suppressed interest rates and $85 billion a month? What happens when that stops with the stock market? You think the market is too high or too low in relative to we're printing $85 billion a month to pop it up?
I think it's a miracle they've been able to bring it to the 14,000 mark.
When it ends, it's going to have to reprice downward. Yeah. There's going to be so many things that reprice downward. And Jim Sinclair says they'll print money to infinity, and he's right, they will. But along with infinity, with printing money to infinity, because they're not going to stop. They will not stop. They even no matter what they say, they're not going to stop. They're going to do naked short selling. They're going to pull all kinds of derivative gimmicks in the markets for gold and silver and for to keep interest rates low, and they don't want the warning flash of gold to go off and show that the prices are increasing. But ultimately what will happen to the dollar it'll be a market event. It'll be a sell. The dollar will sell off. Some type of treasuries will be sell it off. People will be running toward the when they call BS on the BS, it'll be external forces that will. 300 million people in America don't wag the tail for 6 or 6.5 billion people in the world. We don't.
That's right. You're exactly right. Greg Hunter, we are out of time, but a fascinating interview. I got to get you back on. I greatly appreciate it. Again, folks, his website, usawatchdog.com. Go to it, bookmark it, go back there every day, check it out. A lot of good information. His YouTube channel, Greg Hunter on YouTube. Greg, thank you very much for coming on. I greatly appreciate it.
Okay, pal.
All right, man. Guys, stay tuned for Jeff Rentz. He is coming up next. We will see you tomorrow night at the same time. Have a good night. Peace.